So welcome to Showtime, the fifth step of the selling process. Now Showtime is where we match what we've learned at Discovery to a product or service that we believe best suits our prospect. So in the last module, we used the bridge after we asked all our Discovery questions, and it simply went, if I understand you correctly, you're looking for X, Y, and Z, is that correct? And then your prospect can say, yes, that is correct, or maybe they'll give us some additional input. And then it's from here that we're going to use another bridge that's going to bring us into Showtime. So based on what you're telling me, I believe I have the right product or service for you. The product or service I have in mind is X. And it's from this point where you can then introduce the product or service that you believe that most closely matches your prospect's criteria. So you can simply say, look, the product I have in mind, it matches everything that you need. And again, you go through everything you learned in the needs. It has everything you want. And you go through everything you learned about the wants. You know, it's the price you want to pay. And basically you go through all the different categories that you learned during the discovery phase of the selling process. So when you're done showing how the product or service you believe best match your prospect's criteria, it's almost a logical conclusion that the prospect should buy off you. However, logic doesn't usually win over because it's a left-brain activity. So let's cast our mind back to what we learned about the neocortex. And you'll remember there's a left hemisphere which is responsible for speech, comprehension, arithmetic and writing. And it also craves information and always wants to know more. While the right hemisphere takes care of creativity, spatial ability, artistic and musical skills. And it's also responsible for decision making. And it does this based on intuition, emotion, experiences. So to be great at Showtime, we need to understand that people make subjective decisions based on intuition and emotion. And if we can tap into this, then it'll be another potent weapon in our arsenal for change. So welcome back. We're going to start this section by watching a short clip from The Social Network. And in this clip, we're going to watch Mark Zuckerberg trying to convince his girlfriend on the merits of staying with him.
Although just because something's trite doesn't make it any less
I want to try to be
true.
straightforward with you and tell you that I think you might want to be a little more supportive. If I get in, I will be taking you to the events and the gatherings, and you'll be meeting a lot of people you wouldn't normally get to meet.
You would do that for me?
We're dating.
Okay. Well, I want to try and be straightforward with you and let you know that we're not anymore.
What do you mean?
We're not dating anymore, I'm sorry.
Is this a joke?
No, it's not.
You're breaking up with me?
You are going to introduce me to people I wouldn't normally have the chance to meet. What is that supposed to mean?
Wait, settle down.
What is it supposed to mean?
Erica, the reason we're able to sit here and drink right now is because you used to sleep with the door guy.
The door guy, his name is Bobby. I have not slept with the door guy. The door guy is a friend of mine, and he's a perfectly good class of people. And what part of Long Island are you from? Wimbledon?
Wait.
I'm going back to my dorm.
Wait. Is this real?
Yes.
Okay, then wait. I apologize, okay?
I have to go study.
Erica?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I mean it.
I appreciate that, but I have to go study.
Come on, you don't have to study. You don't have to study. Let's just talk.
I can't.
Why?
Because it is exhausting. Dating you is like dating a stairmaster.
All I meant is that you're not likely to... Currently. I wasn't making a comment on your parents. I was just saying that you go to BU. I was stating a fact. That's all. And if it seemed rude, then of course I apologize.
I have to go study.
You don't have to study.
Why do you keep saying I don't have to study?
Because you go to BU. Want to get some food?
I am sorry you are not sufficiently impressed with my education.
And I'm sorry I don't have a rowboat, so we're even.
I think we should just be friends.
I don't want friends.
I was just being polite. I have no intention of being friends with
I'm under
you.
some pressure right now from my OS class, and if we could just order some food, I think we should be...
Okay, you are probably going to be a very successful computer person. But you're going to go through life thinking that girls don't like you because you're a nerd. And I want you to know from the bottom of my heart that that won't be true. It'll be because you're an asshole.
So imagine Mark Zuckerberg, as portrayed in this movie, trying to sell you something. Now I don't think he'd be very good at it because he's extremely logical and left-brained. Now Harley Davidson, for example, should be sold on emotion because it's certainly not a logical purchase. So as a salesperson, you might touch upon the emotional aspects that come with owning a Harley Davidson. So you might talk about the exhilaration of speed that you get when you roll back the throttle, or the prestige that comes with owning the Rolls Royce of the motorcycle world, or maybe the freedom of the open road, or the camaraderie of the millions of other fellow riders just like yourself. So after Showtime, your Harley Davidson prospect, should be saying, I just bought a Harley. I can't wait for the exhilaration, the prestige, the freedom, or the camaraderie. Oh yeah, and it's got excellent resale value as well. Because we make decisions based on emotion, and then we rationalize them with left brain facts later on. I'm going to share with you some tips on maximizing Showtime so you can make it more appealing to the decision-making right side of the brain. So the first one I have for you is to the left. Now this is an interview technique developed by the FBI to get a suspect to look at them more favourably. So during interrogations, the FBI would arrange it So the suspect will be looking at them from their left-hand side. And doing this engages the right hemisphere part of the brain, where studies have shown the suspect would then look at them more favourably. Conversely, if the suspect was looking at them from their right-hand side, they would then primarily be using their left brain, and this would make the suspect more analytical of what the interrogator is asking them. So if you want your prospect to look at you more favourably during presentation time, you should try this technique. Now the next one on my list is intrinsic value. Now people love it when a product or service has a story to tell. And it's this story alone that makes it valuable. Because if you ever watch TV programmes like Pawn Stars or Storage Wars, you'll see the power of intrinsic value at first hand. So whenever possible, make sure your prospect knows the story behind your product or service, as this could add value to the sale. So another important tool that we can use to stimulate the right brain is touch and feel. So if you're selling a product that someone can touch and feel, try it on or even take it for a test drive, make sure you're taking full advantage of this. Now I'm going to cover feature and benefit. Now there's a golden rule in sales that states, never give a feature without explaining the benefit. Now many salespeople fail here because they tend to present their product or company features without explaining the benefit. So we'd always remember that the benefit is the emotional aspect that tells our prospect what's in it for me. So for example, a feature could be, this mobile phone has continuous access to your emails. So what? A feature and benefit would be, because this mobile phone has continuous access to your emails, you can keep in touch with people while on the move. Now another example of a feature is, our calculator has a solar battery. Again, so what? Well, you could say, because it has a solar battery, our calculator can run indefinitely in normal daylight. Now I'm going to move on to story. Now humanity's been telling stories for tens of thousands of years. And no doubt our brains are hardwired to listen to stories. Because if you have any children, you know exactly what I mean. Because the minute you say, let me tell you a story, something magical will take place. Because not only do they listen to it, but they also smell it, taste it, and feel it as well. So not only is story a great format to use with your prospect, but something else very powerful will happen. And that is when you tell a story, your prospect's going to connect better with you as well. Because as you tell the story, they'll make the journey from one side of the desk to the other side of the desk. And by doing so, they're actually putting themselves in your shoes and they're imagining exactly what it's like to be you. So finally I'm going to move on to trial close. And trial closes are used to get small agreements from your prospects. And of course, when you add up all these small agreements together, they could equal one big yes. So we're going to watch a little video on this.
Good or good? Yes?
How many agree with me on this? Raise your hand, say aye.
Get that?
Say aye.
Who here wants to be wealthy and successful? Raise your hand and say aye.
Count it, raise your hand, say aye, come on.
Makes sense, yes or yes?
Write it down, focus equals feeling. You find a way to add more what? Value.
You get that? Say it louder, true or true? Damn straight it's true, okay?
So as you see in this video, both Tim and Jordan use trial closes to get small agreements from their audiences. And they'll say things like, is this making sense? Do you see what I'm getting at? Do you understand? Can you relate? Right, okay, got it. So if you want to engage and get buy-in from your prospects, you should try and get in the habit of using trial closes as well. Welcome back. Like I mentioned previously, if you know what the prospect needs and wants and what their closest match is, then you can slide right into showtime by simply using bridge number 3. Based on what you're telling me, I believe I have the right product or service for you. The product service I have in mind is X. Now this signals to the prospect that what you're about to present them is based on their criteria, and it's not something you just pulled right out of the air. Then of course you go ahead and you show the prospect where you believe everything is a match. So you'd say it has everything you need, and then you highlight where the needs are being met. Then you'd say it has everything you want, and again you'd highlight where these are a match. And also it's in your budget, and you cover where it's in their budget. But essentially if you show everything as a match, then the prospect will have a good idea of how it's a good fit for them. Of course, in real life, not all sales is going to be a 100% match, as some compromises will be needed. But as long as the needs are being met and you're dealing with a somewhat reasonable person, then this presentation method is going to be fairly effective. The only thing you need to make sure is that you're injecting plenty of right brain activity into showtime, so you're appealing to the decision-making right side of the brain. Now, could you imagine this course without any pictures, videos, analogies, stories, animation, and delivered in a monotone voice? I mean, how interesting would you find it? So with that being said, let me tell you the story of Florence Nightingale and how the use of visual aids went on to save countless lives. So for most of us, when we think about Florence Nightingale, we imagine her as a nurse taking care of wounded soldiers during the Crimean War. However, most of us don't know that she actually had a deep understanding of hygiene and the relationship between a lack of hygiene and mass infections. She was also a pioneer in statistics, and she would have held the title of mathematician had it not only been a male-only title back in its time. Now, during the Crimean War, the death rate for wounded soldiers was a staggering 42%, and Florence recognised that by just making improvements to hygiene standards, she could dramatically reduce this to just 2%. However, her findings fell on deaf ears, as military leaders of the day failed to understand the link between hygiene and infections. And for them, it was only a cost of doing business. So not deterred by this, Florence understood that she needed a more effective way of explaining complex concepts to the typical layperson. So what she used was a pie chart known as a Rose diagram to better explain the data visually. Now I know we take this for granted nowadays, but back then this was revolutionary. Florence had the foresight to understand that by using visuals she could better explain the correlation between hygiene and infections to the typical layperson. So narrow-minded generals were able to understand the problem visually and were better able to put their biases aside. Over time, hand washing and other hygienic practices became implemented across hospitals worldwide. And these small changes went on to save countless lives, and all thanks to Florence's insight and her use of visual aids. Welcome to Showtime's Helpful Practice Activities. Here you'll find some practical activities that will help you better personalize the sales process. As always, you'll find a copy of these activities in the Accompany 4D Selling Sales book. You can improve the impact of Showtime by maximizing the retention level of the prospect. And the better able you are to engage the prospect, the higher the chances you have of closing them out. Think about it. There's no point in successfully completing all the steps that we've done so far, only for it all to fall down with a boring and unengaging delivery. One of my favorite communication studies that I have seen measures the retention rates from 3 different styles of presentations. So you have the hear only, which only has a retention rate of 10%. Then you got the hear and see, which incorporates the use of visual aids, and this then suddenly jumps up to 20% retention rate. However, while using hear, see and discuss, retention rates jumped as high as 40%. Just like what we have seen with Tony Robson and Jordan Belfort, where they engage their audience at a much higher level when the conversation becomes a two-way discussion rather than a one-way presentation. In other words, you have to make sure Showtime is as interactive as possible. So what I'd like you to do here is create a sales presentation that incorporates all the elements of hear, see and discuss.